It's so bad. This is my wife's Mini Cooper. Every time she leaves our parking lot, she scrapes the front of her bumper. Oh, so harsh. Let me show you what that does. You think it's just damage to the bottom or something like that. No, this is all pulled out here. You see that? It's just terrible. And then when she comes back in, she does the same thing. Oh, it's so bad. So that's not good. Now here's our stock 2011 Honda Odyssey. So just a standard minivan. Oh, I mean, come on. That is just ridiculous. So being an engineer, I came up with a great, easy solution to this. I decided to put a 7-inch lift on this sucker and 33-inch tires. Check this out. Yeah, it's not gonna touch now. Oh wait, that's a different car. But even with this FJ Cruiser, I mean, that is a lot of stress on that suspension. Every single time you come in and out of this driveway, you're gonna push that suspension to its limits. For all those who watch my channel, you know I'm a big motorcycle fan. Here's my racing bike, and you can see how much that curb impacts my tire. I will not ride this motorcycle up this curb because I'm too worried that I'm gonna damage something in the suspension, maybe blow out a seal. That'd be really hard on the bike and also very, very dangerous. So if I'm positioned here on this curb to my driveway, I can't get it up without rocking it several times. Yeah. Okay. So what would be a great solution? A better one than 7-inch lift and 33-inch tires on a minivan. So I decided to walk around my neighborhood. Here's some asphalt. You can see it peels right off of the concrete. So that's a pretty awful solution. That's not going to work. So I was thinking maybe concrete. Here's an example. You can see it also doesn't stick and it really looks quite bad. I'm sorry to this neighbor for filming their concrete mess. So here's another solution. This one uses short pieces of plastic, it looks like, and you have to bolt this into the concrete, and you can see on this first piece it's actually broken through the studs, so it's no longer in place. So even if you bolt it in the concrete, which is going to damage your concrete, it's just not a great solution. So here's another one. This one also requires bolting in. This was just recently placed, and you can see that's already out of alignment. If you don't bolt it down, all the pieces will start to move around separately and get out of place, so that's not going to work on the long term. Then I stumbled on this beauty. Look at this. Everything's super lined up, looks really professional, clean. I really like this solution here. And they were nice enough to write their name and contact right here on the centerpieces, Bridjit.com, 877-522-6611. And then looking around the neighborhood, I saw more and more of these, and everywhere I looked, these were all perfectly aligned. They looked sharp, professional, nice. Really, really like this design. Good job, Bridjit, for coming up with this. And here's one where you had next door neighbors basically having the exact same solution. So I decided to give these guys a call. The call went great. I spoke to the actual owner of the company here in the United States, and apparently his father invented these and has been selling them ever since. Great USA company. They're super heavy, 50 pounds, made out of rubber, really good quality. And he agreed to send me a full set to test here on my channel. Each of the ramps comes individually packed. You can see I got the 4-pack because these are very heavy. Each of these weighs about 50 pounds. They aren't going to be moving around a whole lot. Look at that. Okay. There's one of the ramps. They are solid. Look at that construction. This is one of the edge pieces because they have a roll off on this side here. Looks like this is the instruction sheet in here. And in here you have your nuts. You've got these bolts already installed. This is one of the 2 centerpieces. In this particular kit, I got the extended version, which includes 1 extra centerpiece. If you get the regular version, it's going to have the 2 sides out here, plus 1 center. Since these are 50 pounds each, it's highly recommended that you get help. Here's my help for the day.
A lot.
Place the center sections in the center. The end pieces are a little bit different, so you want to make sure that the narrow section faces the street and the wider section back here faces into your driveway. Once you have them assembled where they need to go, you're going to flip them over into the street. Once they're flipped over in the street, make sure they are perfectly aligned with each other. If you bought the 3-section kit, you're now ready to assemble. If you bought the 4-section kit, you've got to remove one set of bolts from one of these 2 center sections. Use the back side of your hammer. My particular claw hammer has too much of a curve to actually make good leeway, so I'm just using this little tiny tack hammer and a regular hammer and just using the 2 together to pull this out. Just easy does it. Comes out nice and easy. With all the ramps aligned and the hardware for the 4th section removed from one side, it's now time to hammer those bolts home. Now, we do not want to hammer them all the way. You need to leave at least 1/8 of an inch clearance between the head of the bolt and the rubber. While standing on the section you're going to be hammering the bolt through, hammer on the bolt. Now we're going to hammer these bolts all the way until there's no less than 1/8 of an inch. No less than 1/8 of an inch is about 2 pennies wide. That's about 1/8 of an inch there. So just enough to allow these pennies to slip in, have a little bit of wiggle room. I was having a little bit of trouble getting this nut on, so I put something underneath a section, and then I'm using a flat blade screwdriver pushed in from the top here, and just giving it a little bit of go, getting it just enough lined. Now you have to be really careful not to damage the rubber. And then you screw this on by hand. After trying several different screwdrivers, including this little guy, you need to have a pretty beefy one. This one's made by Milwaukee in order to get enough force and also to not damage your rubber. And then you just tighten it up by hand. Make sure that you have a pencil available to give you about 1/4 inch of bolt coming out of the nut. Then move on to the next set. It's critical that you do it this way. Make sure there's no less than 2 pennies worth of width there, and a full 1/4 inch, a maximum, of the bolt coming out of the nut here. Now, please note, there's no way you can get this nut off without that screwdriver and the leverage that we were applying. So you don't have to tighten these down, and please don't, because if you do so, every time this rubber flexes when a car drives over it, it's going to rip this, and eventually it's going to degrade the ramps. Here's the fully assembled set of ramps. Now, if you're worried about theft and you're absolutely certain you don't have to add any more center segments in order to span your driveway, you can come in with a set of pliers and crimp the end of this bolt. That will make the nut very difficult to remove. Now, starting at one end, you're going to lift it and try to flip it over, working your way toward the center. And if you have help, now's the time to use it. You can see how she's working it over to flip it. Now that we have it completely flipped over, now we've got to match it to the curve on our curb. I'm going to take 2 people. So we're going to start over here on the left-hand side where this ramp is aligned pretty well with the curb, and you can see we start to misalign as we go further down here. Now with one person standing on the end, I'm moving the other section out to make a gap at the top. Then continue doing that for each subsequent section. It's all installed, curved, matched, and ready to be driven on. Let's give it a try. That's so much better. No contact whatsoever. Same test, I'm right up against the curb. Oh, that is so much easier. Piece of cake. So unless you want your car dancing every time you come home, get these Bridjit ramps. And doesn't it look great? Thank you for watching. See you next time. Get Bridjit and don't be this guy.